Hello, it is you, Willie. I'm back again. Man, you know, sometimes wake up in the morning and I'm really pessimistic, and it seems like everything's lost, and it seems like if you're pro America, we're losing, and our country's being beaten down and forced to take on neo-segregation and these critical race theory, and we're all evil and we all have original sin. And other days, you get up and it's more optimistic. And I think today is one of those days I'm more optimistic. And it's not because the right did anything. It's because the left is acting absolutely insane. There's a Democratic congresswoman arrested during voting rights protest at Capitol. So, Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, a Democrat of Ohio, was one of 9 people arrested during a voting rights protest at the Capitol this afternoon. Beatty, who serves as the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, shared a photo on Twitter of U.S. Capitol police officers putting a zip tie on her and escorting her out of the building. "Let the people vote. Fight for justice," Beatty said. Alright, we'll go on. The Congresswoman had been participating in a protest calling on the Senate to pass the For the People Act, Democrats' sweeping election reform bill. The For the People Act passed the House in March, but is being held up in the Senate because of the filibuster. Demands to amend the filibuster to pass the For the People Act, as well as the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, have intensified as Republicans have enacted voting restrictions across the country. Okay, well, let's break this down. First of all, why the heck, if you're someone in office, are you acting that way? Can you not be civil enough to round support yourself? You have to get arrested? And then people on the left, you know what they'll say? "Oh, look at her, she's fighting." And it does go to show you, the left has a certain vigor for when they're fighting for a cause, and it's but I don't think it's motivated by what's right or wrong. I think it's motivated by virtue signaling. Like, they're motivated by how others are going to view them and see what they're doing. Because if you go into the For the People Act, it has nothing to do with helping people vote. It's all about doing what the Democrats did against Trump and putting that into office, so that will go on forever. Let's see a couple of the things. It massively opens voting, expands mail-in voting. You can vote before. Now you have 2 weeks to actually vote. It says if you're 16 or 17, you can pre-register to vote. It establishes criminal penalties if you hinder someone from voting, and it makes it harder to refresh voting rolls. What else? It also wants to make D.C. a state, and it requires presidents to release tax statements. That's basically what's in the act. So I don't know what any of that has to do with voting rights. It just seems like the Democrats want to continue to get as many low information voters in their on their plantation as possible. But obviously, hopefully, people who aren't too political will see something like this and think it's insane. But they won't actually go through the bill. They'll call it the For the People Act, so it sounds good. It's the Green New Deal. Oh my God, the For the People Act. What was the one? The Patriot Act? Oh God. Our government must love us. But there's more important things going on, especially in Cuba. And I am from Florida, so I really do love Cubans, because Cubans, they tend to be very conservative. They hate socialism, and unlike Democrat strongholds, a place like Florida is very diverse. You go down the street, you see a black person, you see a Mexican, a Cuban, someone from Russia, someone from Eastern Europe, white people. It's all different types of people because they don't have all these regulations and restrictions. So people kind of just go wherever they feel like they want to go. But the left is blaming the U.S. for what's happening in Cuba. And so I hope normal people see this and see the reactions to this, and come back to the side of the more reasonable. Havana, Cuba. Thousands of Cubans took to the streets on Sunday to protest a lack of food and medicine as the country undergoes a grave economic crisis aggravated by the COVID-19 pandemic and U.S. sanctions. See how they slipped that in there? Demonstrators complained about a lack of freedom and the worsening economic situation during the rare protests. According to people who spoke to CNN and video from multiple cities, including capital of Havana. Many chanted for freedom and called for President Miguel Diaz-Canel to step down. Multiple protesters were arrested by police who used tear gas to break up some demonstrations. In Havana, a CNN team witnessed demonstrators being forcibly arrested and thrown back in back of police cars. There were also violent clashes where protesters turned over a police car and threw rocks at officers. In a nationally televised address, President Diaz-Canel said, U.S. trade sanctions have created economic misery on the communist-run island. Diaz-Canel did not offer the protesters any concessions in his speech, but urged his supporters to physically confront them. The order to combat has been given, he said at the end of his appearance. Revolutionaries need to be on the streets. In the city of San Antonio de los Baños, just outside Havana province, hundreds of people defied a heavily police presence to their complaints. So you look at, even the cops are sick of it. And how CNN are you going to go and even try to blame the U.S. for what's going on? It's Cuba. They're communists. That isn't our responsibility. The U.S. isn't their mommy or daddy. If they decide to rule with the fist of authoritarianism, and they decide to control everything, and stuff happens, and COVID happens, it's not our fault to go and bail them out. And I'm 100% on the side of the people protesting. I saw a funny comment on one of Tim Pool's videos that said we should bring the old tradition of gun running back into Cuba. Give all the protesters guns. Which, man, it's better than living under communist rule. But this doesn't fit their narrative. This doesn't fit the left's narratives that America is bad, America is evil and the worst place in the world. And even the cops are sick of it. I mean, how long can a communist regime stay up? And what happens if it does collapse? I don't know. I would be 100% willing to give everybody in Cuba citizenship. I obviously, my opinion on that doesn't matter that much, but I love Cubans, and I think it would be a huge deal for history if Cuba fell apart. But I digress. Back to the article. On Monday, U.S. President Joe Biden called on Diaz-Canel government to hear their people and serve their needs. We stand with the Cuban people in their clarion call for freedom and relief from the tragic grip of the pandemic and from decades of repression and economic suffering to which they have been subjected by Cuba's authoritarian regime, Biden said in a statement. White House National Secretary Advisor Jake Sullivan also tweeted on Sunday night, the U.S. supports freedom of expression and assembly across Cuba and would strongly condemn any violence or targeting of peaceful protesters who are exercising their universal rights. Well, what do you do when you have you just let them control their people and control every single aspect of their lives and break every single freedom that we hold as Americans dearly to our hearts? we support it. I mean, we're trying to do it in our own country. And one organization who does support it is Black Lives Matter. Now, let's read their statement. And this is what got me really excited. Black Lives Matter condemns the U.S. federal government's inhumane treatment of Cubans and urges it to immediately lift the economic embargo. This cruel and inhumane policy, instituted with the explicit intention of destabilizing the country and undermining Cubans' right to choose their own government, is at the heart of Cuba's current crisis. Since 1962, the United States has forced pain and suffering on the people of Cuba by cutting off food, medicine, and supplies, costing the tiny nation an estimated $130 billion. Without that money, it is harder for Cuba to acquire medical equipment needed to develop its own COVID-19 vaccines and equipment for food production. This comes in spite of the country's strong medical care and history of lending doctors and nurses to disasters around the world. The people of Cuba are being punished by the U.S. government because the country has maintained its commitment to sovereignty and self-determination. United States leaders have tried to crush this revolution for decades. Instead of international amity, respect, and goodwill, the U.S. government has only instigated suffering for the country's 11 million people, of which 4 million are black and brown. Cuba has historically demonstrated solidarity with oppressed peoples of African descent, from protecting black revolutionaries like Assata Shakur through granting her asylum, to supporting black liberation struggles in Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, and South Africa. Now we look to President Biden to end the embargo, something Barack Obama called for in 2016. This embargo is a blatant human rights violation, and it must come to an end. I said, why does nobody, why? It seems like in our culture, it doesn't matter what you do as long as you're the little guy. If you're the little guy, you can kill, rape, shoot, steal, do whatever. If the big guy tries to stop you or does anything to you, you're in trouble. And it seems like it's Marxism. And that's what Marxism basically is. It's oppressor versus oppressed, where this all stems from. And it's like, why can't we condemn the communism and say, hey, end the communism, and then we'll help you out. This could be a huge way to liberate the people from Cuba. But instead, we get Black Lives Matter, who doesn't really care about Cubans. More so, they care about taking down America. And so, I hope people see this. I hope people see these tweets, see these crazy that crazy congresswoman, see what's happening in Cuba, where they're killing protesters, they're arresting them, even the cops are over with it. It's complete anarchy. And they think, hey, maybe these people don't really care about being good as much as they have their own secret agenda. So, but that we'll have to wait to see if that comes to the surface. Thank you for watching. I'll be uploading Monday through Friday. If you like it, let me know.